is Donald Trump.
It is now official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president, defeating Vice President Kamala Harris.
We are projecting at this hour the 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump, will be elected to return to the White House.
This is an incredible moment in American history for Donald Trump.
NBC News, ABC News, and CNN have all called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. This election is over.
So many of us wish this hadn't happened.
I know it's painful to talk about.
I mean, I've spent most of the morning crying.
I have to move, I'm pretty sure.
I no longer have faith in who we think we are. I'm horrified by the fact that my fellow Americans chose a felon, a rapist, and an insurrectionist.
I wake up and I just see Orange is back.
Kick to the body by John.
And is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, it's time for a very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Not only has Spencer Pratt declared war on the commie deep state in Los Angeles, but Tulsi Gabbard has finally released her ultimate report on U.S. government-funded biological weapons facilities around the world. And yes, of course, a good number of them were in Ukraine. So we are going to take a retrospective. We've already discussed this topic on so many occasions, blown the lid off the evidence. It's just wonderful to see our outgoing Director of National Intelligence bringing the heat. I can only imagine what else is going to come in the next week or so before she finally heads off into the sunset. Also, a big shout out to Climber63 for the $100 rant over there on Rumble. I wanted to help with your honeymoon fund. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. Oh, also, I got something special cooking in the background for you guys. Me and Green Star working on very, very interesting project. Now, of course, these are not the only subjects we're going to go over today. We must check in on the current state of race relations in America because they're not getting any better. In the meantime, all I need from you, it's free. Just hit that thumbs up, hit the red pill, hit the like button, and then sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn because we're getting into it right now. Recently, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. So here's the reality. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium every single year, but we produce less than 1 million pounds domestically. That leaves America 98% dependent on foreign suppliers for our supply. It's a critical vulnerability for national security, power generation, and advanced weapons systems. With Russia controlling much of the global enrichment capacity and escalating tensions in Iran threatening nuclear supply, the stakes could not be higher, which is why the White House has made it crystal clear. America must develop its own supply chain. And this is where Kirkstone Metals comes in. They trade under KSM in Canada and KSMCF in the US. They've got decades of uranium and junior mining expertise, and Kirkstone's leadership team knows how to turn exploration projects into real value. But the question is, can they do it again? Kirkstone controls two 100% owned uranium projects strategically located in the Athabasca Basin. This is the richest uranium district on the planet. And at their flagship Key Lake project, drilling has already hit high-grade uranium right near the surface. But the team truly believes The real prize lies deep underground. So using a playbook based on the decade's biggest discoveries, they're hunting the massive source below. So let's talk about the Athabasca Basin. It's home to multi-billion-dollar names like NextGen Energy and Denison Mines. The Athabasca Basin has delivered over 20% of the world's uranium discoveries, with an estimated $200 to $300 billion worth of uranium identified in the ground, and yet Kirkstone is still sitting at a market cap below $12 million. That's an enormous disconnect between what's found in this district and how some companies are valued today. On January 14th, the U.S. administration reinforced their commitment to domestic energy security, invoking Section 232 via an executive order. It's a formal declaration of resource independence. It's a mandate. Energy security is now national security, and the U.S. government is deploying its full fiscal and regulatory tools to secure the nuclear fuel cycle in North America. Kirkstone Metals is strategically positioned to capitalize on this shift. Now, uranium prices have surged, and some analysts project prices could exceed $100 per pound by 2026 as demand outpaces supply. Federal momentum has already begun to translate into dollars on the ground, including billions in planned funding for domestic uranium enrichment capacity. The sector is entering one of its most active drilling seasons in years, and with its flagship drill program approved, Kirkstone has exploration underway, and they're advancing with a focus on execution. Some companies operating in the district are valued at over $10 billion, and with the U.S. pushing for domestic uranium, Kirkstone could potentially become a leading beneficiary of the reshoring mandate. So if you want to learn more about this critical mineral story and about a team that has delivered big results in the past, check out the link in the description. And a very special thanks to Kirkstone Metals for making today's video possible. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you guys are having a great day. We have so much to talk about. First, I didn't really... yes, hold on just a second. Yes, I am. Ash just texted and asked if I was live. Okay, so SpaceX has gone public, and they opened with an IPO of $135 within minutes of beginning trading. It was already up to $150, which means that Elon Musk is now the world's first trillionaire. Hold on, I want to see where it's at right now. Now it's at 163.15. It was at a high of 176.27. So looks like it's been holding pretty steady in the 160 to 165 area. For those of you who trade stocks, I don't have any money to trade stocks. I really wanted to see if I could get some SpaceX, but it just wasn't in the cards. All right, you guys, let's get into everything we're going to be talking about. First, I need to say thank you to Trump1. Thank you for the cookie. And Moon Baby, thank you for the cookie as well. What up, family? She says. Also, Principled Enigma says, here is another $5 challenge for the smash hits on Red Pill 78. Thank you, sir. You are a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you again, Climber, for that very generous donation. All right, first of all, we have another catastrophic fire taking place inside of a very large facility. This time, a 1 million square foot Medline Industries distribution facility located in Tracy, California. Strangely enough, these seem to coalesce in the California area. Don't really know why that is, but I wanted to do a little bit of digging on exactly what Medline was, and so Tony Saruga had this fairly comprehensive tweet that he had put together. Oh gosh, I forgot to turn... I forgot to turn the fan on my camera again, and so it was starting to overheat. Hopefully I did that fast enough. Okay. So Tony says this is a hell of a situation unfolding in Tracy. 1 million square foot medical supply warehouse going up is no small thing, especially with the sprinkler system failing and hydrant pressure being garbage. So those are two pretty important details. These are the kinds of things that turn a bad fire into a catastrophic one. So here's a few things he says we should be paying attention to. Number one, the sprinkler hydrant failure is the real story here. A building this size in an industrial park should have had a fully operational fire suppression system. The fact that it wasn't working on entry combined with poor hydrant pressure suggests either maintenance negligence, system design flaws, or infrastructure issues with Tracy's water grid in that zone. And this would not be the first time that we've had issues with water in California. Why is it so dark? Okay. All right. Now, fire chiefs also don't casually mention that stuff to the press. It's a pretty pointed comment. Supply chain implications are non-trivial. Medline is one of the biggest medical supply distributors in the country. A 1 million square foot distribution center represents a significant node in their West Coast logistics. Now, depending on what's being stored here, PPE, surgical supplies, gloves, gowns, etc., this could quite easily ripple through hospital supply chains in the western states. Obviously, that could lead to bringing up costs for medical care to every single person watching this if you have to end up going to the doctor or end up in the hospital, God forbid. The healthcare system is already running on just-in-time inventory. It's a major node going offline for months with this fire happening, and this building is almost certainly a total loss if the roof is collapsing. Now, that video I just showed you a moment ago, it does appear that everything in that building will be a total loss, and that loss is undoubtedly going to be felt across America. Now, the FedEx spread is concerning because embers jumping into a neighboring FedEx building means that this wasn't very quickly contained. If that FedEx facility is a sorting hub, you're looking at a cascading logistics disruption beyond just medical supplies. Everything in that FedEx distribution facility has the potential to go up. And of course, there may very possibly be things that could be flammable. They could be hazardous. They could be tracked and shipped using special parameters. But the air quality is another thing. How many times are we going to have to talk about the air quality in California? Thick black smoke means plastics and synthetic materials are burning. Medical supplies are heavily plastic packaged. That is nasty particulate matter, and that's not currently expected to be severe, they're saying. However, officials are giving you a standard early staging messaging. Every single item inside that warehouse would be wrapped in plastic. Many of the items wrapped in plastic are also going to be made from man-made materials. So the likelihood of these things burning and then ending up in the atmosphere and causing a health hazard in the very near future are pretty likely. Anyone downwind should be taking this serious regardless of what you're being told. The fact that no one's injured is also genuinely remarkable, given the timing of this fire apparently has started in the middle of the workday and the speed of the spread described. This is the only bright spot we can point out here. So keep an eye on whether any official starts asking pointed questions about the sprinkler systems, or more importantly, potential sabotage, like what we saw in the paper warehouse, where that disgruntled employee was just walking around and setting cases of paper towel and toilet paper on fire. This is pretty likely to be where the investigation is heading. So here is another angle of that fire. You can see, my God, that is a lot of smoke. A 1 million square foot facility is not a small place. And that smoke seems to be pretty thick, and I wouldn't want to be breathing in any of it. Is there anybody here in the audience who is close to Tracy, California? I don't even know where Tracy, California is. California is obviously a big state, but I do know that we have some Golden State viewers in the chat. So if you are and you want to drop that into the chat, let me know if you've seen any of this, if you're getting any of the smoke downwind, if you've taken any pictures or videos. I'd be happy to see it. Want to check this out as much as we can. All right, now, we also tragically had a shooting event take place in Midland, Texas earlier today. Now, the bright spot here is that the shooter himself is dead. This was earlier in the day an active shooting situation. The Ector County Sheriff confirmed that the suspect had barricaded themselves into a building in downtown Midland. Officials said early on that one person was dead, 11 others were injured, and multiple people had already been transported into local hospitals. We do have some video posted from social media that we can go ahead and check out right here. So this is actually the sheriff's department or the local police engaged in a firefight with whomever this shooter was.
Whatever it is little.
Sounds like a little pea shooter.
That's smaller than what he was shooting. Yeah, whatever he's shooting at, that's a different vehicle. That's a different gun.
That's enough for me. I'm just standing target right here.
Not way out here. He got other people.
All right, not too much to see there, but moving on, this active shooter situation occurred in the business area, in the area of Business 20 and Eisenhower on early Friday morning, according to the city of Midland. The city said that multiple agencies responded to the shooting. Public obviously was advised to avoid the area, and the city of Midland told 9 News West that the suspect was barricaded in a building. The Texas Department of Transportation reported that Business 20 had been shut down. Other than the fact that the shooter is now dead, don't know much more. I did see a brief press conference that city officials in Midland had gave earlier today, and I've just got so many tabs open, I didn't want to pull it up in addition to everything else. All right, here we are. Shooter identified as Victor Meta Villarreal. He is now deceased. The video in this post is from a previous incident involving Villarreal, and it shows the shooting that led to his attempted capital murder charge involving a police officer. So this could have something to do, obviously, with why he decided to go on a shooting spree today. Here we go.
Come here. Come on, come here, come here. That's why you don't.
Oh, yeah, you want to run? Don't want to be waiting around to see what's going on. Okay, here we go. Texas standoff gunman dead.
11 people were shot. Mayor Lori Blanc says one person was dead on the scene. Here's what the mayor had to say.
Many of you are already aware that we have had an active shooter in our community. We want to start off by saying that our thoughts and prayers are absolutely with the victims and with their families, with our first responders, with all of the medical staff that are responding this morning.
4 people, I should say, have undergone surgery. 5 people are in stable condition now at Midland Memorial Hospital. That's 9 people who were treated and went to Midland Memorial. Now, there was an incident 2 days ago, which during a traffic stop, someone opened fire with a rifle at the officer who was stopping that vehicle. That individual got away. There's no real indication that that is connected to this shooting really at all, other than the timing. And if you remember back in 2019,
I would like to know if this guy is an American citizen or if he is an illegal. So, yeah, he is reported to be the suspect who opened fire at officers and bystanders before locking himself in. He was already wanted for an attempted capital murder. Let's see. He resided in Odessa. DPS and other agencies responded. Villarreal was wanted for capital murder for attempted capital murder of a police officer after firing multiple shots at an MPD officer during a vehicle pursuit on Wednesday, the 10th. Texas Rangers are investigating, and as this is an investigation that is open, they are not going to be releasing any additional information at this time. Now, something very strange is going on in Myanmar. I didn't have a chance to get to this story yesterday, but Myanmar, if you don't know, it's a country in Southeast Asia. It seems to be a pretty interesting place. I've heard a lot of stuff about people going there. However, an American diplomat was reported dead in their largest city of Yangon. Now, police were treating this as a possible homicide, and members of the diplomatic community in Yangon have spoken with the AP, and they said that a Thai woman was detained by police in connection with the investigation. So American officials in Thailand and at the U.S. Embassy in Myanmar had referred questions on the case directly to the State Department, which confirmed that the death of a U.S. government employee assigned to that embassy had taken place, but no additional information was given. Out of respect for the privacy of the family and loved ones, we have no further information to provide at this time. The fact that he was found with a Thai woman or a Thai woman was potentially being questioned in relation to a homicide. I want to know what's up with this guy's family. Does he have a wife and a family? And was he with a Thai woman that was a prostitute? Or was this just a woman he had picked up at a bar or something like that? Anyways, so the American citizen was reportedly found dead about 2 weeks ago at the Sakura Residence and Hotel. And Antonio Graceffo had published several reports from inside Burma right here. The facility with long-term rentals is popular with diplomats, business people, and other international visitors. It's about 1.5 kilometers from the American embassy. Police are treating this as a possible homicide with this Thai woman in custody. Thailand's foreign minister said it has provided consular assistance to this woman, and they've notified her family, but they will not comment any further. Now, in addition to that, a former U.S. Marine and former head of the American Chamber of Commerce in Myanmar has also been detained by authorities there. Adam Castillo, who was traveling to Myanmar to promote his new book, Finding Our Voice, which is a critique of Myanmar's junta for human rights abuses, was detained as he re-entered the Southeast Asian nation. Now, the U.S. State Department has since been briefed on Castillo's arrest, but they have, again, not released any information due to privacy concerns. So he is apparently an American businessman who wrote this book about the military coup in Myanmar. He was detained as he returned to this nation, and he is the former head of the American Chamber of Commerce, which is also based in Yangon, which is the same place that we have this dead diplomat. And he runs a security firm there. He was stopped at the airport as he was traveling to the country. A U.S. State Department spokesperson said it was aware of reports of the detention of an American, but he had no further comment. Now, in July of last year, Castillo attended this meeting with J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance, to discuss ongoing U.S. relations with Myanmar. In that meeting, Castillo apparently suggested that the United States could play a peacekeeping role in Myanmar and urged Washington to take a page out of China's playbook by first brokering a bilateral self-governance deal between the Myanmar military and the Kachin Independence Army. He's also been one of a number of voices that have been urging Washington to adopt strategic policies towards Myanmar, given the country's status as the third largest producer of rare earth minerals. And these are minerals such as dysprosium and terbium. They are high-performance magnets that are used in iPhones, electric vehicles, and defense equipment, including fighter jets. Right now, most of their rare earth minerals are exported to China, and China, of course, accounts for about 90% of the world's rare earth processing capacity. Castillo has suggested that the United States begin working with Myanmar so that they can reduce their reliance on Beijing for rare earth minerals, and then, of course, that would be a major financial boon for the United States of America. Now, I don't know if these two cases are connected, but it's not often that you hear a situation such as this happening in close proximity in a rarely visited Southeast Asian nation. Now, a good portion of the show today is going to be about the biolabs, and I would like to begin that conversation by discussing a situation with a U.S. service member. Now, the Board of Corrections for Military Records has apparently been engaging in systemic failure. There is this troubling trend of neglect and indifference towards service members who have stood firm in their convictions and refused to take the COVID-19 clot shot. That's kind of shocking now after everything that it seems the Pentagon and the U.S. government has done to remedy that. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has, of course, gone on record on a number of occasions and said that we are specifically making good on people who were forced out of the military. Now, the question is, why are service members still experiencing negative impacts on their careers due to the military's now rescinded 2021 COVID clot shot mandate? That mandate was rescinded in January of 2023, and then, of course, later on, it was declared as unlawful as implemented in May of 2025. David Younts is legal counsel for Major Matt Murphy. Major Murphy believes he was railroaded towards administrative separation as a result of his 2021 religious objections because he didn't want to take the shot. So the retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and former Judge Advocate General officer said that his client a U.S. Space Force officer at the Naval Reconnaissance Office in Virginia, had the integrity to do what was right, and yet after all these years, it has still cost his career. On June 11th of this year, Murphy was mainly accused of failing to attend a physical training session for which he had already faced administrative punishment, despite documented evidence indicating that his attendance was not necessary. Coincidentally, the individuals overseeing him were the same ones who attempted to remove him during the COVID-19 pandemic. They've made remarks regarding COVID and his religious beliefs, and I firmly believe he is being targeted for issues like missing a PT session, which no officer would typically receive a career-ending letter of reprimand for. Now, for Younts, this situation raises some significant alarms about ongoing retaliation. It also brings into question whether or not the Department of War is genuinely committed to supporting service members who have been coerced, mistreated, and retaliated against regarding the shot. I would say that the one thing they're missing here is considering whether or not the Pentagon, as a large bureaucracy, is even aware of the ongoing retaliation that's still continuing to happen to people like this man right here. Murphy has admitted that this journey has been one of the toughest multi-front battles of his 15-year career. In 2020, he and his wife moved to New York to pursue a PhD at the Rochester Institute of Technology as part of an Air Force Institute of Technology civilian institution program. And then in 2021, when they were pregnant with their second child, the family was confronting this draconian measure enforced on them by not only the military, but also by the state of New York. Murphy was barred from the RIT campus due to the institute's shot mandate policies, and that ultimately led to him being disenrolled from the program. At the same time, he was also engaged in this separate struggle with the Department of the Air Force. And with that second child on the way, it was just too much for he and his wife to bear. Amid the turmoil and stress after that birth of their third child, what most mattered to Mr. Murphy was finding time for peace and quality time with his family during those precious early years when his children were still little. But according to his attorney, the NRO and his command had a different idea. Younts explained that without any prior verbal notification, any feedback, or adherence to standard practices as instructed in every professional military education school, the NRO and Major Murphy's command initiated a series of severe disciplinary actions in quick succession, including the issuance of a letter of reprimand and the imposition of an Article 15. So on its surface, this case appears to be one of the more egregious cases of COVID retaliation and reprisal that has yet been brought to the attention of our firm, said Younts. Not only is there no actual misconduct at issue, it was inexplicably escalated to extreme levels that resulted in Major Murphy turning down an Article 15 and demanding trial by courts-martial. Murphy filed an inspector general complaint because, in Younts' opinion, his commanding officer utilized mental health evaluations as a strategic tool against him through the command-directed evaluation. He further asserted that he may have been seeking a means to rescind Murphy's security clearance. So his superiors displayed a concerning level of indifference towards the significant health issues he was experiencing, which included persistently imposing unnecessary stress, harassment, and pressure. Now, since 2024, Murphy was passed over twice for the rank of lieutenant colonel because of these career setbacks he experienced as a result of not doing the COVID-19 shot mandates. And he's reached out for a tuition waiver to the Rochester Institute of Technology. And he's also reached out to promotion boards and the BCMR as well, to no avail. So sadly, Younts is sharing that this lack of advancement is often considered a career killer. And rather than letting Murphy retire as a major, he contends that it seems there was an effort to significantly undermine his career and future employment opportunities by forcing him into administrative separation. When you hear about this stuff, it is shocking, especially considering the administration that is currently in power. And, of course, Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's public comments on how this stuff is not supposed to be happening. Considering the vast bureaucracy that the Pentagon is, it seems like the information is not reaching the high enough levels to make it possible for these things to be put into a point of stasis and for people like Major Murphy to have his career made whole again. So in the hopes that this will, I just want to bring as little attention to this as we possibly can. Jim Kyle says, Zach, in California, the local fire sprinkler alarm company inspects water flow and pressure quarterly. They have some explaining to do. You know, I thought that was it. I mean, anytime you have a building or a business that large, and even a building small, it seems like the fire inspector is definitely going to make sure that they're coming around and they're checking things. You know, I mean, this also could have something to do with simply a lack of water in the area. And hold on, oh my God, it's 77 degrees in here. I got to turn the air on a little bit. All right, now, moving on, we also have a new piece of information that was released yesterday by Senator Rand Paul, and it's highly relevant to the release about the biolabs, which came out today. So yesterday, Rand Paul released a series of documents showing that the former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases director, you know him, you hate him, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has had deep and decades-long ties with the U.S. intelligence community, and these ties predate the COVID-19 pandemic by nearly 20 years. I don't know if you remember this, but some time ago, during the entire expose that was being released about the bioweapons facility, there was some indication that we got, and I reported on it here, that Dr. Anthony Fauci, although he was publicly the head of NIAID, was also in a secret and clandestine sense the actual head of the United States Biological Weapons Program. Now, in this timeline that was produced by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, Rand Paul chronicles extensive communications and contacts between Fauci and spy agencies. If Dr. Anthony Fauci was, in fact, leading the clandestine biological weapons program for the United States of America in contravention of international treaties, which bar us from doing just that, it would make total sense that he would be in regular contact with various aspects of the intelligence community. As of, for instance, when private emails show Anthony Fauci was alarmed by the COVID-19 virus's engineered-looking features back in January of 2020, Fauci, of course, helped orchestrate the so-called proximal origin paper, which was the public dismissal that a lab origin was possible, and instead argued that the virus emerged naturally. Fauci then quietly fed that same NIH-funded narrative back into the intelligence community during Biden's 90-day review of the pandemic. Fauci had exchanges with the intelligence community regularly. However, as we said, they began well before COVID-19. Now, according to the timeline released by Rand Paul, in August of 2003, Fauci formally reviewed and provided feedback that was incorporated into a National Intelligence Council unclassified paper on SARS implications for the United States. He was later thanked by name for his contributions when the paper was published later that month. Also in November of 2003, Fauci received a copy of a Central Intelligence Agency report entitled The Darker Bioweapons Future, which warned that advances in biotechnology could enable the creation of far more dangerous engineered pathogens. Isn't that interesting? Well, that same month, he was forwarded a NAS report on biotechnology and bioweapons for a scheduled meeting with the Center for International Security Studies. And in September of 2003, Fauci was invited to participate in an October 1st Threat Reduction Advisory Committee review of the Department of Defense's Chemical and Biological Defense Program Direction. In September of 2007, Fauci was invited by Robert Joseph. At that time, he was the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, and Ash Carter to participate in an outside expert review panel commissioned by the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. They were looking to assess future directions for its chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear activities. That panel met in the fall of 2007 with a report due by February of 2008. Now, the timeline also reveals that on January 31st of 2020, Christian Andersen alerted Fauci to concerns about SARS-CoV-2's furin cleavage site. Fauci urged Andreas Andersen to convene scientists, and if they agreed the features looked engineered, to report that matter to the FBI and MI5. And according to the Lancet, one of the most prestigious medical journals in existence, the presence of a furin cleavage site on the spikes protein of SARS-CoV-2 differentiates it from earlier coronaviruses. They didn't exist in that way up until this point. Cleavage at the S1, S2 boundary allows the virus to bypass certain entry barriers. That makes it significantly more adept at human-to-human transmission. And on February 1st, Fauci joined a high-level scientific call discussing whether the virus appeared to be lab-engineered. That same day, the National Academies of Sciences convened experts including Andersen, Peter Daszak, and Ralph Baric. Peter Daszak and Ralph Baric, those names always come up in these conversations. And then on February 3rd, Fauci participated in the National Academy's call on the origins of 2019 nCoV that included intelligence community officials, which was soon followed by an invitation to address the secretive Jason Group. That's an independent group of scientists who advise the government on national security issues. By March 6th, Andersen informed Fauci and NIH Director Francis Collins that Nature Medicine would publish the resulting proximal origin paper they had made up, which explicitly thanked them for their advice and leadership. That paper appeared on March 17th, 2020, concluding that SARS-CoV-2 was not a laboratory construct or a purposely manipulated virus. And then in 2021, after Biden ordered that 90-day intelligence community assessment of COVID-19 origins on May 26th, Fauci received multiple classified briefings and read-ins. By June 4th, the National Security Council held a classified briefing for him, and then on June 9th, HHS arranged his participation in a highly compartmentalized Deputies Committee meeting requiring special clearances. And then on June 21st, the National Security Council provided Fauci a sensitive read file he could not remove from his computer. By June 28th, the intelligence community formally requested relevant information from HHS and NIH. And then following a classified reading room session on July 8th, Fauci forwarded the NSC a new preprint of the same proximal origins authors, describing it as the work of highly qualified virologists that summarizes what I said yesterday and asking that it be shared within the community. And then on August 25th, the NSC invited Fauci to review a very interesting report on the same topic. He called it important, and he planned to read it at the White House. Now, all of this is so interesting when you place it next to the biological weapons facilities that were exposed several years ago in the early days of the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, we knew that they were real. The evidence was overwhelming. Despite what the administration said to us, we had every indication that these things were real. Now, we had information that was released by Anons looking through documents that had been found on the internet. We had revealed information coming from the Russian government that was seized when they went into some of these facilities. But we never got clarification from the administration until Victoria Nuland, on under oath in a congressional hearing, admitted that, yes, in fact, those very biological weapons facilities were in fact real. Now, I would like to take you, before we watch Tulsi Gabbard's video that she released, and we are going to take a look at the documents. If you go back to March of 2022, that was when Russia put out their report showing that the U.S. was funding these biological weapons labs in Ukraine. It was March 9th when Jen Psaki, who was at that time the press secretary for Joe Biden, went before the White House Press Club and fully denied that any of these things were real. She also tweeted out on X, Twitter at that time, now that Russia has made these false claims and China has seemingly endorsed this propaganda, we should all be on the lookout for Russia to possibly use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine or to create a false flag operation using them. It's a clear pattern. I remember thinking at the time how funny it was that the Biden administration would be using the false flag term to describe something that they themselves had already perpetrated. Let's take a listen to Firecrotch Jen Psaki.
I wanted to follow up on your tweet yesterday about being on the lookout for Russia to use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine and possibly creating false flag operations to use them. What is the evidence to back that up beyond what you said in the tweet that it's a pattern from Russia? Is there more to this than it just being a pattern for them?
Well, they have a large biological and chemical weapons program. So it's a pattern, but they also have the capacity. Well, I'm not going to get into specific intelligence. We look at all of those factors. And we also know, and one of the main issue that prompted my Twitter thread yesterday was that Russia has a history also of inventing outright lies like this, which is the suggestion that the United States has a chemical and biological weapons program, or Ukraine does, that they're operating. Russia is the country that has a chemical and biological weapons program. So the objective was to make clear the inaccuracy of the information, the misinformation they're trying to put out, and make clear to the world that they not only have the capacity, they have a history of using chemical and biological weapons, and that in this moment we should have our eyes open for that possibility.
So that was the official statement from the Biden administration on March 9th. It was actually the day before that when Victoria Nuland, being questioned by now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, admitted that we actually did have these biolabs.
Does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
Does Ukraine have...
All right, so... it's not biological weapons facilities. It's a fine line between biological weapons and biological research. Well, Tulsi Gabbard is going to erase that line and tell us exactly what really went on. So today I'm releasing never-before-seen intelligence revealing new evidence of the past U.S. government funding for more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries, which included Ukraine. In support of President Trump's executive order to end federal funding for dangerous gain-of-function research around the world and increase transparency and accountability, ODNI will continue working with partners across the administration to identify where these labs are, what pathogens they contain, and what, quote, research is being conducted. Now, we've been waiting for this report to be coming from the ODNI because some time ago, Tulsi Gabbard had gone on record and stated as such that they were working to determine exactly what the extent of this program was. And we'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But before I play the video from Tulsi, Denise Ann says, seems to be a trend this week. Okay, so that video that you sent was actually from May, and we covered that here. That was in Boston. So I don't know if there was maybe a different tweet that you meant to send, but thank you, Denise. My mother, Real Red Pill 78 Mom, says getting in on that $5 challenge, and heads up, I'm calling you tomorrow. We may be in Orlando because Eric is in town, so if we speak, it'll have to be later in the day, but I love you. Artsy Jones says, there's a $5 challenge. Oh, yes, count me in. Thank you, Joan. Lee Walden says, I accept your challenge, RP Mom. Thank you, Lee. Principal Enigma, wow, Zach's mom was the first one to meet the challenge. Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you so much. And then Siesta Randy says, have a great weekend, Zach, and all. I really appreciate you. Filter Dog also says, Elon just created 4,400 millionaires. Really? Did he really? Okay. Then Filter Dog says the entire Iran conflict will cost less than the Minnesota fraud. It absolutely will. Also, Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 1955 into law July 2024. In response, Elon moved SpaceX headquarters out of California. Yes, he did. All right, let's listen.
After months of searching through intelligence community holdings and files, today I'm releasing new evidence of long-standing U.S. government funding of more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries. Now, these biolabs include labs in places like Ukraine, which could be at risk of compromise due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, the intelligence community had previously warned that a U.S.-funded biolab in Ukraine likely housed dangerous pathogens and remained vulnerable to long-standing threats of Russian attack, seizure, or damage. Now, until now, evidence regarding the full existence and funding of these laboratories had been knowingly withheld from you, the American people. Many of these U.S. government-funded biolabs are currently or have previously engaged in research using hazardous and highly contagious pathogens, and in some cases included dangerous gain-of-function research, with very little visibility or oversight. Now, President Trump clearly understands the serious threat dangerous gain-of-function research poses to the American people. And this is why he took decisive action over a year ago. On May 25th, 2025, he signed an executive order to end federal funding of gain-of-function research around the world. Here at ODNI, I issued new guidance to the intelligence community directing increased collection on these laboratories and facilities overseas. And we're already seeing the results of this increased collection. We're learning new details, for example, on clinical trials that are underway at these facilities and that are raising significant ethical, financial, and security concerns regarding the supposed public health initiatives and U.S. national security. Now, despite the obvious potential for catastrophic global impact that research on dangerous pathogens in biolabs can have, politicians and so-called health professionals like Dr. Fauci, as well as entities within the Biden administration's national security team, lied repeatedly to the American people about the existence of U.S.-funded and supported biolabs. Not only did they lie, they threatened those who attempted to expose the truth.
There you go.
So this release today breaks new ground, as the information surrounding the existence, history, locations, and funding of these U.S.-funded biolabs has been intentionally covered up by very powerful people who falsely claimed that these biolabs didn't exist. Now, they accuse anyone who says otherwise to be foreign assets and traitors to America. Now, ODNI will continue working closely with partners across the U.S. government to identify exactly where these labs are and what pathogens they contain to end dangerous gain-of-function research that threatens the health and well-being of the American people and people around the world.
Tulsi Gabbard is a national treasure. I am going to miss her so much. I really hope that her husband is going to heal quickly and that if possible, she can come back to the administration or come back even in politics in some way. Now, I've never told anybody this, but right around the time that I was really hitting this biolab story hard back in 2022, I got a message from somebody on X who was trying to bait me, trying to catch me slipping. They started out by saying, hey, I really enjoy your show. I've been watching for a long time, and I just had a quick question. They said, are you registered as a foreign agent? Have you admitted that the reporting that you're doing is helping the Russian government? Does the Russian government give you any direction on what you're trying to talk about or the stories that you're trying to cover? And I was like, get the F out of here, dude. I am not a foreign agent. I don't need to register as a foreign agent. I have never accepted a dime from a foreign country, Russia or otherwise. In fact, I've never accepted a dime from the government of the United States of America. I am entirely self-funded, and I don't have a budget. I don't have any support other than the few advertisers that every now and then do want to advertise on the show. And then, of course, the lovely people here in the audience. This show is about truth, transparency, and exposing corruption. And oftentimes, the public officials that are supposed to be keeping the best interests of the American people at the forefront of their mind are those who are most corrupt. I'm so happy that she specifically called out Dr. Anthony Fauci. in that release right there. So let's take a look at the information. Now, there isn't that much of it, and it goes to show you just how much this was covered up over the years. I've often said that the CIA learned a valuable lesson many years ago when they got caught with their pants down with MK Ultra and all of the sub-programs underneath it. You can't get caught if you don't keep records. That's why so many of these programs are so highly compartmentalized. Everything is a need-to-know basis. The people who know are the people who are working on them, and the people who are working on them do very, very little record keeping at the end of the day. And the stuff that they do keep is so highly classified at levels that even if you had a FOIA request that was responsive, you would never be able to see those documents. They are so well hidden that they're even hidden from a person like the Director of National Intelligence, who ostensibly is supposed to be a watchdog over every single one of our intelligence agencies. Now, you can see here, this is a declassified release by Tulsi Gabbard, and quite a bit of it is, in fact, redacted still. But they're talking about the veterinary research facility in Kharkiv, ongoing target for Russian misinformation and other potential operations. The Institute of Experimental and Clinical Veterinary Medicine in Kharkiv probably houses at least some dangerous pathogens and almost certainly remains vulnerable to long-standing Russian information operations, seizure, or damage. The institute, which was founded in the 1920s and may have had Soviet biological warfare ties, specializes in veterinary medicine, virology, and toxicology. Now, we actually will get more information if we take a look at the report that Russia put out in 2022, right around the time that Victoria Nuland made that admission during the congressional hearing, and subsequently it was completely denied by Firecrotch Jen Psaki. You can see here in Ukraine, there were over 40 biolabs that were built and supported, not just in Kharkiv, but all around this area here, stretching from the western portion of the country all the way into the Donbass, which may give us a little bit of, and even down into Crimea, that may give us a little bit of insight as to why the Western government of Kiev was so dead set on ensuring that these breakaway republics were never allowed to be self-governing. Because if they were, then of course they would find out what was happening in these classified biological weapons facilities that were owned and operated with the help of the United States government and the intelligence community. Let me say very, very much, or very, very big thank you to Freya, who says, I disagree, Zach. I have donated tons of money to you, and I am from Somalia. You better register. LOL. Challenge accepted. Pay it forward, people. Thank you, Zach, for what you do. I appreciate you, Freya. Thank you so much, sir. And Texas Jules. Good to see you, Texas Jules. She says, anybody who's been watching you for any length of time knows you operate at a very high level of integrity, Zach. You are one of my favorite OGs, and I rarely miss a show. Thank you so much for saying that, and thank you very much for your support. It's always a pleasure to see you in the chat, and, of course, to see you in person at the GARTs around the country. Are you going to be at Deadwood, Jules? All right, and here we have a list of connections to the U.S. biological weapons defense industry, and it's a number of U.S. agencies as well as universities and companies like Black & Veatch, which we have covered extensively here on the channel in the past, and it looks like some other pharmaceutical companies as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Russian report, which was released by their Ministry of Defense back in 2022. Now, the general, Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, who had released and given this presentation at the time of its release, was unfortunately assassinated at his home by Ukrainian intelligence operatives at the directive of Western intelligence. It's worth suggesting that perhaps Lieutenant General Kirillov's life was taken directly as a result of his release of this information. Now, this is all in Russian, so I'm going to be translating by reading the subtitles for anybody at home who is not watching the video, if you're listening to the audio podcast. Thank you so much to Principled Enigma, who says you were doing programs with an American reporter in the Ukraine back when this was all got started. Yes, my good friend, John Mark Dugan. If I remember correctly, he was ostracized from this country. Whatever happened to him? He is still doing his stuff. He is still living in Russia. And we chat every now and then, but he has been unable to get back into Ukraine because of how dangerous everything is. So unfortunately, we were unable to continue doing the reports. And then, what is that? Chow Corinne, thank you very much for the $20 rant. She says, keep up the great work. I appreciate it. CK Felt says, jumping on the bandwagon. I love listening while I decorate sugar cookies. Ooh, that sounds good. And then BDR1776 here is for the $5 challenge. Thank you, thank you, thank you, my friends. All right, here is that original report from Russia after they had seized a lot of information from a number of these facilities. Provocations of a Provocations of a biological nature with the aim of blaming the Russian Federation due to the fact that we managed to stop the implementation of military biological programs. Now, what we have here on screen is a number of scientists that apparently were working within these facilities in the liberated territories of Ukraine, which would be that Donbass and the eastern breakaway republics. The Pentagon is forced to transfer unfinished research within the framework of Ukrainian projects to other regions. Currently, Africa is in the area of increased interest. We have already noted the activities of key Pentagon contractors on the African continent in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Sierra Leone, Cameroon, Uganda, and South Africa. Customers from the U.S. government include the U.S. Department of Defense Threat Reduction Office, DITRA, and the State Department. To conceal the purpose of the research, Washington hired third parties. These are contracting and intermediary organizations. MetaBiota was one of them. Quicksilver was another. Eco Hall Alliance. Hold on. Eco Health Alliance, not Eco Hall Alliance. More than 20 companies in total, as well as enterprises of the so-called biopharma. Pay attention to the commercial offer of the MetaBiota company marked confidential. It is addressed to the U.S. Army Infectious Diseases Research Institute and concerns the training of infectious diseases specialists in Kenya and Uganda. The document demonstrates that the U.S. Department of Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DITRA, is studying pathogens in the countries on the African continent. Department of Homeland Security, and to give visibility to the interaction of the U.S. Agency of International Development, USAID. Let me remind you that the activities of the MetaBiota company have now been discontinued in Africa since its methods of work have begun to raise too many questions at the level of a national government. Thus, in 2014, samples of the Ebola virus, which is particularly interesting considering the ongoing conversation about outbreaks of Ebola in Africa, and of course, the recent arrest and indictment of Dr. Anthony Fauci's lackey attempting to bring Ebola back over here to the United States. These Ebola samples were illegally exported by company representatives and transferred to the U.S. Army Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. The slide also shows participants in illegal military biological weapons activities. Among them are former military personnel from the United States and Great Britain, employees of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Africa, and representatives of the Global Fund.
America great again.
Well, thank you so much, Jim Kyle, for that donation over there on Ko-Fi. Let me see if there's a message attached to it. Also, PD77 late last night said, add this money to the Double Lung Fund, Zach, and I did just that yesterday. Thank you for that, PD77. And Jim Kyle says, I love your reporting, Zach. Thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate you, buddy. All right, so we could talk about the biological weapons facilities ad nauseum for hours and hours and hours, but if you go through my channels, whether it's on Rumble or on Pilled, you can find all of those reports dating back to 2022 and beyond. Thank you so much to My Undivided Life. Here's for the challenge. Love your show. I appreciate you, my friend. All right. Now, before we get into the conversation for the rest of the show, I do have a brief message that I need to read you from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys know what time it is. It is America's 250th birthday. We are coming up on this big anniversary, 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever seen. This would be the perfect moment to help your kids and grandkids understand exactly why this nation is so important. There is a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's quite honestly a great way to introduce your kids to how America began. It'll teach them who the founding fathers were, what it was that they risked, and why those ideas they were fighting for then are still relevant today. The guide is going to send them back to the very moment when those brave men signed the Declaration of Independence. It's going to break it down in a way that is entertaining and informative. It's not going to water it down or make it feel like schoolwork. So if you do care about raising kids who know where this country came from and teaching them why it's worth preserving, this is something that is worth grabbing. The best part is it's completely free. You just pay $2 for shipping and handling. To pick one up, go to freeusabirthday.com. That is freeusabirthday.com, and the Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday is yours today. You can also use the QR code on screen because America's story matters. Let's make sure the next generation knows it. All right. Thank you very much to Rumble. All right. So, wouldn't you know it? A federal judge early yesterday blocked Attorney General of Texas Ken Paxton's lawsuit against Act Blue. And you will never believe the reason why, or maybe you will, because it is clearly a sign of election interference. Now, remember back in April, Ken Paxton had publicly announced this filing of a lawsuit against Act Blue. It was for their smurfing activities, deceiving Americans by lying about their donation process that allowed for fraudulent and foreign donations. And of course, that money from Act Blue would then be transferred into the coffers of Democrat candidates. U.S. District Judge Richard Stearns, who is a Clinton appointee, issued this preliminary injunction and said that Paxton has a history of retaliatory lawsuits. Now, I suppose the only case that could be made for retaliation here is that Act Blue supports Democrat candidates. But of course, Ken Paxton is the Attorney General of the state of Texas, and there is measurable harm and a measurable impact that Act Blue has had on the American political system. This judge has blocked Paxton from continuing to pursue the lawsuit against Act Blue over their donation practices. And he's not based in Texas. He's based in Boston. He has argued that Paxton has infringed Act Blue's free speech rights by suing them. At the same time, he was campaigning against Democrat James Tallarico for the same Senate seat that he is hoping to win in November. Stearns, as the appointee of Bill Clinton, said that Paxton has a well-known history of filing retaliatory lawsuits, which continued with his filing of a lawsuit against Act Blue aimed at suppressing political speech. But of course, that's not what's happening. Paxton has previously stated publicly that his investigation into Act Blue uncovered large numbers of suspicious donations that were made through obscured identities and untraceable means. It's fascinating that this ruling comes in the exact same week that the CEO of Act Blue appeared before Congress to answer questions about this very situation. And she pled the fifth on literally every single question she was asked, up to and including what her name was. Our investigation, Ken Paxton said, into Act Blue has uncovered facts indicating that bad actors can illegally interfere in American elections by disguising political donations. Because they can. It's imperative that the FEC close off the avenues we have identified by which foreign contributions or contributions in excess of legal limits could be unlawfully funneled to political campaigns, bypassing campaign finance regulations and compromising our election system. I am calling on the FEC to immediately begin rulemaking to secure our elections from any criminal actors exploiting these vulnerabilities. Now, I don't know why the FEC has not done that yet. Perhaps they were waiting to see what happened with this lawsuit. I am certain that Ken Paxton is most likely going to appeal this. But the fact that a judge in Boston can have anything to say about what the top law enforcement agent of the state of Texas is doing is just proof positive that our system is completely broken. I.E. Amos says, I have been with you since the early YouTube days when you didn't show your face. Now you are a professional. Thank you so much, Amos. I appreciate you, buddy. Glad to see you sticking around. All right. Now, we do have, however, some good news when it comes to that America 250 celebration, because a stunning decision handed down by an Obama judge has actually sided with President Trump and with the administration. So this UFC Freedom 250 claw is what you see on the lawn of the White House, standing high over the octagon, where there will be, of course, a UFC fight for the 250th anniversary of America's founding. This judge has denied a lawsuit against the Trump administration and their plans to host the Ultimate Fighting Championship match. It's going to be held on the grounds of the White House this weekend. This is the UFC Freedom 250. In this order handed down today, U.S. District Court Judge Amit Mehta ruled the D.C. residents who filed the suit against the National Park Service have failed to demonstrate that stopping the event would be in the interest of the public, and that their unreasonable delay in filing this 11th-hour lawsuit undercuts their claims of irreparable harm. Good for you, Judge. I'm glad that you made the right decision. The lawsuit initially argued that President Trump's plan is deeply corrupt and that it gave the UFC unfettered access to the White House and Lincoln Memorial. God forbid. Of course, these are public areas. Anybody can go and visit them, and it's open to everybody. So I don't know how they're getting unfettered access simply because there's an event on the lawn of the White House, and it's not like it's an unheard of thing for the White House to host events on the lawn. Of course, it is certainly unusual that the UFC is going to be hosting a fight there, but the president is the president. He can use the lawn of the White House as he sees fit. If these people don't like the UFC, if they don't like the president, they don't have to tune in. They don't have to show up. Something tells me, though, they are probably going to be there protesting as if they are going to have any impact on the situation at all. Now, the lawsuit even went further. They claim that President Trump's use of the White House South Lawn to host this event, which the White House has called the Ultimate Fighting Championship and the Claw, are actually illegal. In particular, the UFC is erecting a 92-foot-tall, 600-ton steel structure it calls the Claw, immediately adjacent to the executive residence, and it's destroying much of the South Lawn in the process. Now, the UFC is the one paying for this, and I believe President Trump is also paying for it with his money, and there is private money that is also going into this. It's not like the people of the United States are paying for it. It's not like the bill is going to get handed over to the taxpayer like it would if it was the Obama administration. Remember, $60,000 in pizza and hot dogs billed to the American taxpayer. So I don't know where the corruption is coming from. President Trump is not selling autographs. President Trump is not gaining anything from this other than to say he is the man who brought UFC to the White House. Let's take a look at the claw itself. Look at that. How cool is this? I mean, it's pretty impressive. The speed with which they were able to get this done. And look at this. Shucks. This woman over here, Just Jen. I wasn't a huge fan of this idea at first, but I gotta admit, this is really kind of cool. I'm glad that you are enjoying it. Yeah, I mean, it's like certified badass. I'm totally cool with the whole thing. Anyways, the fight will take place on Flag Day and President Trump's birthday, which is Sunday. So theoretically, you could just say President Trump is hosting a kick-ass birthday party on the lawn of the White House, which happens to be where he actually lives. Thank you so much to Abednigo17. Thank you, Zach. You are the best. Thank you for that very generous donation. We also have another good decision coming from a judge. You would think that we are living in the twilight zone, but yesterday a federal appeals court said President Trump can implement his backup tariff plan for now. This was a decision from the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, and they said President Trump is likely to win on the merits of this case. If you remember, last month, the Federal Trade Court struck down President Trump's backup tariff plan after the Supreme Court blocked the initial tariff plan. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court recently struck down that tariff plan in a 6-3 decision, which just defied all logic. They said President Trump does not have the authority to impose those tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. And the High Court's decision only invalidated those tariffs under IEPA. President Trump had imposed that 10% global tariff as a backup plan. A small business filed a lawsuit in the International Trade Court challenging President Trump's global tariff. And last month, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit paused the lower court's ruling while the panel had time to consider the legal arguments. Well, yesterday, the Federal Appeals Court ruled that President Trump's 10% tariff under Section 122 may remain in place. So the 10% tariffs expire July 24th unless Congress extends them. Now, we also have some great news coming from Ohio and a raid on a ballot harvesting group's headquarters. This is very good news that the FBI raided the Cleveland headquarters of the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, or the OOC. The raid took place yesterday as part of an ongoing federal investigation into what is being called suspected ballot harvesting and voter fraud operations. Obviously, Ohio is a key swing state. They also have a large Somali community, so many different opportunities for fraud going on here. Now, they didn't just raid the headquarters. Agents fanned out across the state and showed up at the homes of the OOC leaders. They showed up at the homes of staff members. They showed up at the homes of volunteers and connected community organizers. They were all over Ohio, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati. They served subpoenas. They seized electronic devices, and they questioned these people directly about voter fraud. Now, you may have heard of the OOC. The Ohio Organizing Collaborative presents themselves as a pro-democracy voter registration nonprofit. They are allegedly focused on underrepresented communities. You could also read that as particularly vulnerable communities, communities that you could probably steal a whole bunch of votes from. But in reality, they function as a Democrat-aligned operation. They are deeply embedded in progressive get-out-the-vote efforts across all of Ohio's major cities. So here is some information about those FBI raids. They hit the main office and all of the homes of these operatives working for the OOC. The Ohio Organizing Collaborative, they organize political activities for democratic and progressive causes. The board member, Prentice Haney, said FBI agents came to the organization's Cleveland office, and he said agents have fanned out, asked people questions who work with this organization. Haney said agents have searched and sometimes taken laptops and electronic devices. When they do that, you know they're looking for something specific because they may already have the communications that these people have engaged in. He said that they have also interviewed people who work in the organization. This is not normal business. I mean, there's no reason for over 100 agents to be knocking on the doors of everyday Ohioans. They are demanding and accusing people of voter fraud as if it was a witch hunt. And they're scaring them with the children, following them in their cars to school and to work. I mean, this was a full-out assault. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this since Selma. Look at this asshole. Got to invoke some racial justice here. And so this was completely politically motivated. Can't really say it's racially motivated, even though he's got to make the insinuation that it must be must be racially motivated. So they have a documented history of voter registration fraud. It's actually not that unusual and not that unprecedented. The only thing that's unprecedented is that they were able to get away with this scheme for as long as they did. Go back to 2017. There was a paid canvasser named Rebecca A. Hammonds. She was a direct employee of the OOC, and she actually pled guilty to multiple counts of falsely registering people to vote and of forging signatures on voter registration forms. Now, her sentence was relatively light. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, but some of the fraudulent registrations were even submitted for dead people, giving us yet another argument for why the federal government needs access to the voter registration rolls of every single state in the union. If we go back to the August of 2024, Patty McMurray had reported on a Democrat-funded voter registration group accused of turning in hundreds of suspected fraudulent voter registrations. This was, of course, in Ohio. At that time, there was a group called Black Fork Strategies, which operates out of the state of Ohio. They were being investigated by the Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose over another case of alleged fraudulent voter registrations. I don't know what came of that. Don't think anything did. But on their website, Black Fork Strategies bragged about registering a stunning 125,000 or more voters in Ohio since 2018. The Hamilton County Board of Elections turned over a number of suspicious voter registration applications to the Secretary of State's Public Integrity Division. Now, according to the Hamilton County Board of Elections, the voter registrations in question had been turned over by the self-described progressive voter registration organization Black Fork Strategies. Hamilton County Director of Elections Sherry Poland discussed 3 issues she identified with voter registrations tied to Black Fork Strategies, and she claims that they are running voter registration drives all throughout the state of Ohio. In one of these instances, Ms. Poland explained how they received a voter registration from Black Fork, and the name of the registrant was, get this, Henry Kissinger. We did do a match, the voter registration database as compared to the DMV database, and it was a mismatch on every item listed. Any identifying information listed on this registration form didn't stack up. So we again asked Black Fork for the canvasser who submitted this form, and that is what we have on the summary sheet. Now, Poland also held up a large stack of voter registrations about an inch thick to show just how many registrations one canvasser from Black Fork turned in with what all appeared to be the same handwriting. Lastly, we've received a number of registrations, and there's a table copy for every one of you. She was speaking in a meeting. The stack of registration forms appear to have the same handwriting, and they were all submitted by the same canvasser, who is, again, the contact information listed on the summary they provided. Poland also explained that they've reached out to the Southwest Regional Field Director for Black Fork, telling her fellow board members when we first noticed these suspicious registrations, we asked her to come to the office. Democrat Board of Elections member Joseph Mallory added, I've heard of other counties in the state having to deal with suspicious registrations. I think we should refer the matter to the Secretary of State's Public Integrity Office for investigation. Hamilton County Board of Elections member Alex Triantafylou didn't mince words when describing the alleged allegations against Black Fork. First thing I want to point out is that we use words like anomalies and suspicion and all of this because we try to be PC, I guess. But this is fraud. This is outright fraudulent behavior. Who is responsible and how are they responsible? That's all. That's what we need to know. That'll be up to somebody other than me, but it's plain and obvious to me when you get this many registration cards with the very same handwriting that someone is trying to defraud the elections process in Hamilton County. So to the extent that there's any press watching, voter fraud is real. It does happen. It happens oftentimes in the form of phony registrations, all in the same handwriting. This happens. All right. Now, this will not be the first time that Black Fork Strategies was turning in suspicious voter registrations. In July of 2023, the Cuyahoga, Ohio Board of Elections spent considerable time discussing multiple irregularities and changes to voter registrations. And Benjamin Kindle, the press secretary and deputy communications director for media with the Ohio Secretary of State's office, had provided an update on the investigation into Black Fork. He also informed the Gateway Pundit that the Secretary of State's office had created the Ohio Secretary of State's Public Integrity Division for Ohioans to report suspicious voter integrity issues directly to state leaders. Benjamin provided a press release that was missed by some people for some reason, and there are currently still ongoing investigations by prosecutors in 20 different Ohio counties. Black Fork Strategies is very similar to the case that we spoke about a couple of years ago in Michigan, GBI Strategies, which was the place that was raided and found to have a whole bunch of AR-15s. They were actually SBRs, so very tactical. They had suppressors. There were just mountains of fake registrations. They were questioned by the Michigan State Police. And of course, the investigation was completely swept under the rug by the Democrat triple witch leaders of Michigan. Now, I want to say that there is a video that's embedded here, and let's see how long this is.
This common mistake doubles our electricity bill, and Big Energy is trying to hide.
Black Fork Strategies has been conducting a voter registration drive in Hamilton County, and it's my understanding throughout the state of Ohio. There are a number of registrations that were submitted by this organization that appear to be suspicious, and staff's review of those. And so we have a summary sheet in your packet. I will address the first two voters together, Cassandra Thompson Scott, and it's Harry Scott. Both of these voters.
Okay. So it appears that the Department of Homeland Security has been interested. They took over the investigation from the state of Ohio when the Trump administration came in, because there is no update from the state of Ohio on the Black Fork Strategies investigation. However, there was an email that was given to ABC6, which is a Columbus, Ohio affiliate, where the Department of Homeland Security had sent emails to Ohio Organizing Collaborative prior to raiding them, where they asked specifically what their affiliation is with Black Fork Strategies. Now, they also reference the investigation that had previously been taking place under Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose. And, of course, Black Fork Strategies had previously said they were cooperating with those investigations. In a statement from Democrat Amy Acton, I believe she is running in either the governor race or for Senate, any attempts by federal law enforcement to intimidate eligible Ohioans from registering to vote are unacceptable. U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown called the raid a transparent attempt at silencing Ohioans and their ability to vote. Well, of course, it's not if these people were making fake voter registrations. The campaign of John Husted and Vivek Ramaswamy have not yet replied to requests for comment. All right, so I think that these two investigations are dovetailing, and this will be a pretty big deal. My pill chat isn't moving. Okay, so let me refresh it. Okay. All right. Okay, looks like it should be good now. Thank you for that. Esther G13, thank you for the 500 gold pills. She says, happy birthday to the OGs, DJT and Fredo Awakening. Oh my gosh, I got to text Fredo after the show. Happy birthday to you too, Fredo. If you happen to see this, happy birthday, buddy. No thanks, Joe says, thank you, Lisa and Zach. A great week of reporting. Have a great weekend. God bless and be safe. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, Filter Dog says, the entire Iran conflict. Oh, I read that one already. Okay. Yes. Okay, let me do a refresh over here. Okay, now let's move on to Los Angeles because the news gets weirder. Actually, first I need to say thank you to G. Fontez. I've been impressed and honestly surprised if Obama, Biden, and any other president or administration was pulling off an event such as this. I'm suspect of any corruption always when the government does anything. That's true. I think that corruption is just the sort of way they do things. J.W. Ricken says, salute, best daily news show, period. Thank you, J.W. I appreciate you, my friend. All right, so would you suspect that Karen Bass had been responsible for the destruction of her own brother's home, or that even if she was, that she wouldn't have given him a little bit of assistance in getting rebuilt? I would have figured that Karen Bass would have been right there alongside her brother, making sure that his home was one of the first to go back up, because at least then you would even be able to point to it and say, look, we've helped to rebuild this house. Well, Los Angeles is collapsing right now. The weight of its incompetence is on the minds of all people across the nation, not just the minds of Angelenos. Her own brother has now joined a massive lawsuit against the city over the result of the Pacific Palisades fire. This was one of the most destructive wildfires in the history of Los Angeles, if not the most. It claimed 12 lives. It destroyed 8,000 structures, burned through entire neighborhoods. It was a tragedy, frankly, that didn't need to happen. It was totally avoidable. And due to the incompetence of Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, people were left without the protection that you would expect from your city government. Now, the National Weather Service at that time was screaming that there was extreme dangerous Santa Ana wind conditions, but it's been shown since that time that that wasn't really the case. What we do know is that there was fire, there weren't enough firefighters, there wasn't any water, and Karen Bass was in Ghana. And of course, she was caught on a recorded phone call telling a confidant that there was something that was going to happen before the fire ever happened, and that the person on the other end would understand very, very soon. It really seems to me and many other people hearing that call that Karen Bass was aware that they were planning to burn down the Pacific Palisades and rob people of life, limb, property, and the right to take care of themselves and their families. Now, when the fire broke out and spiraled out of control, the response from the city was a train wreck. And Karen Bass, since that time, has been playing cover-up. She's been caught in lies. She has been caught blaming other people. She ended up firing the fire chief and then rehiring the fire chief and then firing the fire chief again because the fire chief honestly said our budget was cut and we simply didn't have the water. Now, the person who was responsible for the fire was 29-year-old Jonathan Rinderknecht. He's actually from Orlando. He was arrested for the intentional setting of this fire. He was an Uber driver, and for whatever reason, he thought it would be cool to start it. Now, Kenneth Bass and his wife, Cindy, this is Karen's brother, have joined up with the other thousands of victims in this sweeping class action lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and the state of California, as well as multiple other entities. Interestingly enough, the city of Los Angeles is also suing the state of California in a different lawsuit. Mr. and Mrs. Bass's names were formally added as some of the nearly 40,000 victims who suffered losses, attorneys for Kenneth and Cindy Bass told a news outlet. As non-public citizens, they are entitled to respectful privacy as they pursue their legal rights along with all the other represented victims. They had a home in Malibu overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and it was reduced to ash just like everybody else's, and the court documents describe it as a total burn down. They are demanding damages for the complete destruction of their home, smoke inhalation injuries, and severe emotional distress and mental anguish. The complaint was filed on May 18th in Los Angeles County Superior Court as part of this massive tort action lawsuit involving these 40,000 victims, and they claim that the city and LADWP for leaving the Santa Ynez Reservoir, which Spencer has talked about on many occasions, that critical 117 million gallon water storage facility completely empty as the fires raged. Firefighters had no adequate water pressure while the houses burned. The complaint ties this failure directly to the mismanagement by the city of their water infrastructure. and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power's officials claimed the reservoir had been offline for a while due to a tear in its cover. This is, of course, the same city run by Karen Bass, who for years has pushed radical environmental and budget priorities, while at the same time neglecting basic public safety infrastructure, allowing the city to crumble around her. The Palisades fire tore through Pacific Palisades, Topanga, into Malibu. The deaths of 12 people are on the hands of Karen Bass and the others at the LAWDP. And it cost billions of dollars in damages, 23,000 acres completely gone. Victims went from homeowners to homeless in a matter of hours. And there is also an explosive lawsuit from the former LAFD chief, Kristen Crowley, who had accused Bass of cutting fire department resources, shifting blame, and orchestrating retaliation after the deadly response. Karen Bass's administration has faced relentless criticism for prioritizing everything except basic fire preparedness and infrastructure. Now, I would love to tell you that the ballots that people reported missing in California's LA mayor's race had been found. However, unfortunately, I can't do that. There appears to be up to tens of thousands of ballots that are just missing. Now, earlier in the week, I brought you a report of a Los Angeles resident who had voted for Spencer Pratt, and his ballot was never received and counted. And so he was told by local officials to go to the city's website and to just continue checking. Well, for some reason, that website went completely offline, which meant not only could residents not check to make sure that their ballot had actually been received and counted, but for people whose ballots needed to be cured, which is a process that they do in California, they were unable to do that as well. And in the interim, they had just essentially called the race for Nithya Raman and Karen Bass. But LA County has now admitted that roughly 12,700 ballots were flagged in this primary race. And countywide, we have no idea how many votes would have been for Spencer Pratt. We also have no idea whether or not there are many, many more ballots which are simply unaccounted for because people have already given up hope. In LA County, officials confirmed there were 9,713 ballots that were challenged on signature matching. Otherwise, those ballots would have then been, the people who cast those ballots would have been given the opportunity to come in and validate their signature, and then their ballot could count. There were also 2,991 ballots that were completely unsigned. And just in the same way, those ballots could have been cured and they could have counted. Now, the other day, we showed the image of a rejection letter that was posted by DC Cope Chatter, and many Spencer Pratt supporters were sharing that they had received the same letter. You can see here in that letter, it says that, well, apparently I can't. I can make it bigger this way. So in the letter, it says that there is action required and they need to validate their signature. They normally would have done that through the county's website or the city's website, and that website does not work, and so people were unable to validate their ballots. Now, Spencer Pratt has seemingly conceded the fact that he will not be moving on into the runoff election or the final election in November. But he has a special message, not only for the people of Los Angeles, but more specifically for Karen Bass and Nithya Raman. And when I saw this today, I quite literally jumped out of my seat and hooped and hollered. This is one of the most fantastic videos to have been published in any political season. And it is a shot across the bow to all corrupt officials in Los Angeles. Watch and pay attention.
Now that the campaign portion of my mission to save Los Angeles is coming to a close and I'm moving on to the next, more interesting phase, listen, I've spent a lot of time slaying everybody. I've ridiculed everyone on the roster, and I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take the chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. You think you can get rid of me that easily? I know a lot of dim-witted jerks thought I was in this for a grift, that I was going to roll up and leave town if I didn't get into City Hall.
It's just not fair.
Hey, morons, I didn't get in this for political political power. I got in this to expose this corrupt machine, and nothing has changed. You enjoy your worthless meetings in City Hall.
Nithya, you have all this information. You're running for mayor. Show what you're really about, or get the fuck out of the race.
I'm going to be lighting you up every single day, and now I don't have to worry about offending CNN viewers. I don't have a campaign laws hamstringing me now. It's war. It's 0 hour for Los Angeles. Angelinos are now stuck with 2 morons responsible for all their problems, and they have to choose between dumb and dumber. That's not a choice. That's the machine protecting the machine. And now every problem that plagues Los Angeles because of these 2 corrupt communists is going to accelerate, and the city will tumble headlong into the abyss. You have no idea how many major developers, hoteliers, business owners, entrepreneurs have been texting me saying they're packing up and leaving town. More of your favorite restaurants will be shuttering. That means less tax revenue. That means the city has to cut services, more potholes, less firefighters, less police patrols, more criminals, more drug addicts terrorizing your communities. And we haven't ended it. You have no idea how bad things are about to get for this city. Look at this place already. Weeds growing from every crack and crevice, graffiti over every square inch of public space, garbage, drugs, feces, burned up dogs, burned down towns, abandoned storefronts. This city is a mess, and you're about to reward the arsonist who torched a place with 4 more years of destruction? I know he's very bitter. My goal hasn't changed. I've been laser focused on stopping these commie animals, and I will stop them. If you think we uncovered a lot of fraud and evil in the campaign, just wait. We have some recordings of one of your exalted candidates doing and saying something that would make her resign in shame. I was saving it for the general election. Go ahead and pick your demon, certify your choice, and then you get to see it. So Karen, Nithya, ask yourself, is it possible that one of your employees may have a recording of you doing or saying something that would force you to resign in disgrace? Hope you sleep well at night over the next 5 months, because you know who hasn't slept well at all for the last 17 months? My mom. All my neighbors in the Palisades, all the moms who worry about their kids walking past drug addicts in front of their schools, all the business owners getting crushed in the LA economy, worried that they can't stay in business and feed their kids. Angelinos have been struggling for years now, all while corrupt politicians and fraudulent NGOs profit off the misery and fleece us for the tax dollars. Well, now we're flipping the script. I want all of you awake at night sweating and worried about 5 a.m. when the FBI blazers bust in the door, breaking open your office, because I assure you, they're coming. You think your election was going to stop me? If you want to stop me,
you're going to have to fucking kill me!
Yes! Let's fucking go! My God, that was so good. I cannot wait to see what is coming for Los Angeles. I cannot wait to see what recordings he has, and I can't wait to see if the FBI actually busts down their doors and start busting skulls. You got to believe that all of the work Spencer did with the IRS and the FBI and the DOJ prior to this election is not going to end. We already know Bill O'Reilly, President Trump, they've already said that there are ongoing investigations into election fraud that are currently taking place. The campaign currently taking place in California. These are not going to stop. Now, hilariously, yesterday, Dollar Store Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, was asked about the many videos of homeless drug addicts on Skid Row admitting that they had been paid to vote for Nithya Raman and Karen Bass. And he answered in the only way he possibly could.
Earlier in the week, you told me that there is no election fraud happening in California and that anyone who questions the outcome of the election is a conspiracy theorist. However, there are now homeless people on Skid Row admitting they were bribed with cash, drugs, other incentives to vote Democrat in elections. Does that change your stance at all on whether or not these elections are rigged?
Listen, I'm unfamiliar with those reports, and I wouldn't be surprised if those are part of some far-right conspiracy theory being peddled on the internet to try to convince the American people that there's evidence of fraud in California.
Yeah, let's see. Just wait. A far-right conspiracy theory. What else can he say? You know, he's got to stick to the script. He's a fucking moron. Thank you, Unicorn77, who says, thank you for sharing Spencer Pratt's message. I wish he wouldn't concede. Well, here's the thing. He hasn't actually conceded. He's just said that the campaign portion of this operation is coming to a close. If what Spencer Pratt reveals forces either Nithya Raman or Karen Bass to drop out and step away. By virtue of that fact, Spencer Pratt immediately proceeds to enter into the final stage of the election. Spencer Pratt's name will be on the ballot. So I am not willing to say yet that Spencer Pratt will not be the mayor of Los Angeles. It just seems that now he doesn't need to campaign. He doesn't need to be held to FEC regulations because theoretically and temporarily, Spencer Pratt is not going to be on the ballot until such time that he actually is. Principled Enigma says you can't get any more disconnected from reality than Hakeem Jeffries. That was such an asinine statement. It's incredible. Yes, he is absolutely not living on the same planet as the rest of us. Let me say thank you so much to Mighty Patriot. Thank you very much for the phone. I appreciate you. All right. Now, we also have an interesting article from the LA Times. Bill Asaley retweets it and says, the LA Times headline says voter fraud claims are unfounded. And then guess what? When you actually read the article, their own reporting confirms that voter fraud claims are not unfounded. They are 100% truthful. This article documents homeless individuals being paid cash to register to vote. That's a federal crime under 52 U.S.C. 10307C. 3 people told the Times, this is a direct quote, 3 people told the Times they accepted a couple dollars to sign, with one saying he signed multiple signatures using various names and received $10. Yeah, that's a federal crime, and guess what it's called? Voter fraud. It's election fraud. That's not unfounded, Bill Asaley says. That's voter fraud, and it's exactly why there must be investigations, and it's exactly why those investigations are taking place currently. So yes, absolutely stunning, just as retarded as Hakeem Jeffries saying that claims of voter fraud are merely a right-wing conspiracy. You can see here, after Spencer Pratt fell out of the mayor's race, unfounded claims that homeless Angelino's ballots were used to rig the race have spread widely on social media. The Times interviewed election experts and 20 residents on Skid Row who said they had not heard of anyone offering money to vote for a specific candidate. And then, stunningly later in the article, they give that quote that I just read to you. Right here, one TikTok user posted video interviews with 3 individuals identified as Skid Row residents who said they were paid a few dollars to vote for Mayor Karen Bass. The incumbent came in first to the runoff, blah, blah, blah. How much they pay you? The interviewer asked a woman in the video. $5, the woman responded. They told you to vote for Karen Bass or Nithya Raman? Karen Bass, she said. LA County election officials responded to the videos, saying there was no evidence the woman voted for Bass. Who was the actual person who responded? It was Alex Stack, a campaign spokesperson for Karen Bass. They said that the idea that Bass's campaign paid for votes is absurd. Well, nobody said Bass's campaign paid for votes. There was somebody who was ballot harvesting who came around and paid this homeless woman $5 to vote for Karen Bass. He said, it's the same type of false election information and disinformation put out by Trump after he lost the presidency. The Bass campaign concurs with the LA County registrar, saying this issue is false. Well, you know, the only person whose opinion on this I value is U.S. Attorney for the District of Los Angeles, Bill Asaley, because he's the mother effer who's going to be prosecuting these cases. Anyways, we don't need to read through this because the LA Times is trash. And anybody in Los Angeles commenting on this from the Raman campaign or from the Bass campaign, again, we know that they've got to stick to the script. Now, I'd also like to share this post from my friend Stella on X. She's a resident of LA, and she says, if it's illegal for non-citizens to vote, why the hell does the West LA Library have a display for non-citizens that includes a voter registration specifically for non-citizens that allows them to pre-register to vote? They even have a special section on the registration that allows you to vote anonymously if you don't feel safe putting your address. Gee, what could possibly go wrong? It seems it's pretty easy to send in that form and get a ballot, even if you legally can't vote in California, and no one would ever know if you do it anonymously. And the worst part is, LA has apparently made this legal despite it being against federal law. You can see for yourself. It's at the West Los Angeles Public Library at 11360 Santa Monica Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90025. There's a picture of the library. Here's a picture of the ballot drop box right outside of it. Here is the information right there. And here is the request card that you can also see in the information. The voter registration information right there. So hopefully this is something that Bill Asaley, yes, she tagged Bill Asaley, good. Let me see. Did Bill Asaley respond? No, he hasn't responded. All right. But Bill Asaley is obviously paying close attention to this situation. I'm sure they have a whole team of people in Los Angeles paying attention to it. Principal Enigma, thank you again. And, okay, I thought there was something new, but there wasn't. All right. Now, from Los Angeles, let's head on back to my former home state of Michigan. Earlier in June, at June 1st, Governor Gretchen Whitmer attended a ceremonial groundbreaking and site announcement in Saline. This was for a massive $16 billion Oracle OpenAI Stargate data center campus. So the event was held to celebrate and officially announce the project. It's being developed by Oracle and a number of other related companies that are working with OpenAI. It's going to be one of the largest data center developments here in the U.S. Rural Michigan residents are not happy about it. They're fighting back against the data centers in their communities and desperately trying to protect their farmland and their way of life. And Governor Gretchen Whitmer was caught on a hot mic arrogantly admitting exactly how she and her cronies in the state government operate. So in this video, she is discussing the situation with the Oracle CEO, Clay Magorek, and she reveals how little she cares about the people who elected her as governor. You can hear during the conversation talking about the controversy. Governor Whitmer discusses the fact and says, we're used to people saying no and doing it anyway. Let's go ahead and hear it from Stretchin' Gretchen Whitmer's own mouth, the horse's mouth, if you will. It's a short clip, but she doesn't realize she can be heard.
We're used to people saying, no, that's doing it anyway.
Anyone that can live through a winter like you do. I don't know, just like people have a lot of confidence.
So we're used to people saying no and doing it anyway. We're used to people saying fuck no, is that she actually said, and doing it anyway. Anyways, Gretchen Whitmer doesn't care about you. Gretchen Whitmer doesn't care about the residents of Michigan. But local residents were given the opportunity to vote against this, and they did. This was a massive industrial project that's going to be consuming enormous amounts of water, electricity, and Gretchen Whitmer, who may be a 2028 presidential hopeful, wanted to bring this into the state because, of course, it would mean a lot of money for some people. Corporate interests were behind it. They're obviously going to profit. So this isn't just another crony project. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who is also running as the Democratic candidate for governor, has a direct and massive financial interest in this project through her husband. Jocelyn Benson's husband is vice president of the company forcing this data center into Saline Township. Ryan Friedrichs is among former Detroit city officials named in a lawsuit alleging he helped cook the books for Detroit's Motor City Match program. In 2019, Ryan Friedrichs, her husband, was part of a scheme to delete public emails related to a nonprofit organization run by Detroit City Mayor Mike Dugan's then girlfriend, now wife. And according to the Metro Times, the OIG report concluded that Alexis Wiley, a former journalist, abused her authority by ordering employees at the city's Office of Development and Grants to erase emails that referenced the nonprofit. The report also accuses Wiley of misleading the public by denying that the city was using public money to support the program. The department's chief development officer was Ryan Friedrichs, the husband of Jocelyn Benson, and deputy chief development officer Serene Abu Shakra were both complicit in carrying out Wiley's order to delete these emails. The OIG called the scheme egregious, troubling, and extremely problematic and recommended that the three officials be disciplined. Intentionally destroying public records is a crime. It's a crime that's punishable by up to 2 years in federal prison. And Friedrichs was never charged in his role for the deletion of these emails, even though he did it. So while Benson lectures Michigan voters about democracy and election integrity, her own family will become extraordinarily wealthy from this project that most people in Saline have fought tooth and nail to stop. Now, you'll also remember Jocelyn Benson is the same person who spent years bending election rules to favor the Democrat Party, including her very controversial handling of UOCAVA and absentee voting policies. The dirty Secretary of State now wants to be the next corrupt governor, and her husband, Ryan, is going to cash in on one of the largest corporate welfare projects in Michigan history. Yep, these people in Michigan are so incredibly corrupt. Kitsko says someone needs to explain why every city is voting for LA mayor when they have their own mayors. I don't know what you mean, because the only people voting for LA mayor are the residents of LA. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that. All right. Now, President Trump yesterday during that event in the Oval Office had given some statements about what might be happening in D.C. Apparently, a Democrat socialist, also a current D.C. council member, Janice Lewis George, is widely considered to be the next frontrunner in this upcoming election to become the mayor of Washington, D.C. Now, President Trump said that he would not be happy if she wins, and if she does, we might just end up taking back Washington, D.C. and invoking the rule that allows the federal government to refederalize it. Let's listen.
This pocket-sized pressure tool is so powerful, it strips a decade of grime off concrete in 30 seconds.
President, here.
Going to make this full screen. Let's take a listen to President Trump's comments.
Mr. President, here in Washington, D.C., there's a Democratic primary for mayor. One of the two leading candidates, Janice Lewis George, is running a Zoran Mandami campaign. It's focused on socialist policies. How would you feel if she emerges victorious in next Tuesday's
Well, I wouldn't like it, and maybe we'd take back Washington, run it on the federal basis. We won't put up with it. We're not going to lose our businesses. By the way, Washington now is a safe, beautiful place. We had 22 fountains dug that are all working. Not one of them worked for years, for 25 years, 40 years, 58 years. The pool didn't work from 1928 it was built. It always leaked because it was done in stone. Now it's done properly. It's not going to leak at all. But this is a beautiful place now. People are coming. Restaurants are thriving. The restaurants are all closed. Nobody wanted. Now you can't get restaurant space. You can't get into it. We have a thriving community. We got rid of the crime. We're 92% down on crime. Think of it. And we're going to be close to 100% pretty soon. You always have some whack job someplace, but we're going to be close to 100%. So Washington is thriving. Memphis is, the people came in from Memphis, 74% reduction in crime. New Orleans, think of that, 78% reduction in crime. They had the safest Mardi Gras that they've ever had. You know why? Because we sent in people that take care of crime. Chicago should do it. New York should do it. Los Angeles should do it. We'll make them safe places.
All right, so Kitsko says Idlewild, Malibu, basically listing places that people are saying they live. So I haven't seen somebody who says I'm a resident of Malibu and I'm voting for this person in the LA mayor's race. So obviously Malibu is part of the larger LA metropolitan area, but you're right, they have their own mayor. The only thing that I can imagine is perhaps the permanent address of somebody who is currently residing in Malibu as a result of the Pacific Palisades fire, meaning that their house burned down and they've got to live somewhere while they're waiting for it to rebuild. Perhaps that's just where they're staying, as their permanent address is still within Los Angeles proper. There's also, a county election going on. And I would imagine that these other areas in the greater metropolitan area are voting for their own mayors. So without seeing these specific comments, I can only speculate. But what I just said, I think, is, seems like the most logical answer to that. But obviously, if somebody's permanent address is in Malibu, they're not going to have a ballot that reflects a chance to vote for the mayor of Los Angeles, the city. So I don't know if you want to send me anything. I'm happy to look into it. All right. Now, this is a really disgusting story. We've talked about the tragedy and the unconstitutional nature of eminent domain a number of times on this show. This is an instance where Arizona State University is attempting to use eminent domain to seize the home of an 89-year-old man who is living in a 124-year-old historic home in Phoenix. And he's lived there for about 50 years. He's owned the house for 50 years. So this is a pretty disgusting thing for the university to do. They're also a government-backed university, so they're using this this private property seizure tactic known as eminent domain. The Arizona State University and the Arizona Board of Regents have filed a condemnation lawsuit seeking to use eminent domain to forcibly take this 124-year-old historic home from this 89-year-old homemaker who has lived there for the last 50 years. Now, if you don't know, eminent domain is the right for a government to seize private property for public use, provided that the homeowner is paid just compensation, which theoretically is fair market value. But the real tragedy of this is that the government that is seizing the property may vastly underestimate the value of that property. And the person where they otherwise may have been able to get far more for it on the open market would be forced to either just give their property away for nothing or accept what it is that the government is trying to give them. Now, Robert Young is this man's name. He's a former criminal defense attorney. He's also a real estate agent, so he knows about the use of this. He's owned this Lewis Emerson house in Phoenix's Evans Churchill neighborhood since 1975. It was built in 1902, before Arizona became a state. It's a Queen Anne-style Victorian home in one of the last surviving pre-statehood single-family residences in the area. It sits on the Phoenix Historic Property Register, and it represents real craftsmanship from a bygone era when Phoenix was still a young territory town. But ASU wants the land, and they plan to take the home and completely demolish it so that they can build a sprawling new downtown health campus and medical school complex. It's a $200 million project that would include a 5-story, 170,000 square foot facility for the John Shufelt School of Medicine and Medical Engineering, and groundbreaking was already held in late April. So the university claims they need immediate possession in order to institute their plans. I believe we do have a video from the man himself discussing the tragedy of what they're trying to do to him. Let me just make this full screen. This is a mono clip. The audio is only coming out of the left channel, so if you have a problem with your left channel, then you won't hear it.
The offer, I think, on the table, that was on the table, was $800,000. And I can't move it for $800,000. And then you got to take down all this stuff around it. You got to pay for the land where it goes to. It's not realistic.
On behalf of ASU, the Arizona Board of Regents has now filed a lawsuit in Maricopa County Superior Court seeking eminent domain authority over property owned by Young. According to a statement we received from ASU, it reads in part, quote, "The university made several offers to the owner to purchase the parcel, including options allowing for the house to be moved. The university's final offer was based on an appraisal prepared by an experienced, state-certified appraiser, a copy of which was provided to the property owner. The offers were not accepted, a decision Young can't seem to comprehend."
I mean, it's hard to believe that this house has been either here or where the manhole cover was for 124 years. And you know, that should be, I would think, somebody in ASU or the city of Phoenix would say, hey, look, this is a huge mistake you're making.
ASU offered this guy $850,000, but he keeps denying them because it says it's just too expensive to move and it's unrealistic due to the high cost of relocation. But there's another issue here that's being ignored, and that's the significance of this home. It's one of the last surviving pre-statehood residential buildings in Central Phoenix. That means it's older than Arizona's 1912 statehood. So this has a huge historical significance. It's been on the Phoenix Historic Property Register since 1990. And they want to tear it down to build a medical facility.
So I don't know what the the cost of property in this area of Phoenix goes for, but $800,000 to $850,000. I mean, he seems to think that that is not a reasonable offer. Even if they did take the home and move it someplace else, he would have to pay for that new property. He would have to pay for a basement to be dug or a slab to be put down. And he's 89 years old. I mean, the cost of having somebody move every item in your home and then putting it back together when you get there, I mean, that would be a lot of money in and of itself. When Lisa and I moved from Ohio and Michigan down here to Florida, it was a significant expense to move our stuff down here. And I can only imagine at 89 years old, the possessions that you would have accumulated over the course of your life. But the reason that they're not going to wait till he dies or they're not going to give him any more time, as they said, is because they've already broken ground on their planned construction project. And so they're making the argument that they need him out of this property right now. So they are effectively kicking this elderly man to the curb, and they are negating the fact that this home is of historical significance. It is truly a disgusting proposition that they are putting this man in a position with. Now, Young said ASU's first offer for the property was only $190,000. He ignored it. ASU then bumped the offer up to $999,000. That should tell you everything you need to know right there. They lowballed him to see if they could force him out, and then they highballed him to see if it was an offer that was too good to refuse. But Young refused because ASU would not pay for the relocation of the house. Young says that the relocation itself would cost between $2 and $3 million. He's since then been given a pre-condemnation appraisal by ASU, valuing the 833 square foot home and its 4,642 square foot lot at $850,000. A pre-condemnation appraisal is required for filing for eminent domain. Under Arizona law, owners of properties seized under eminent domain must be given just compensation, determined by a jury of peers. However, a judge is the one who decides the legality of eminent domain, and construction can begin before compensation is determined. So they can quite literally rob this guy blind. Young said he's already spent thousands on legal fees trying to save the house. He set up a petition that has gathered, sadly, only 600 signatures and is also working with Preserve Phoenix. This is a nonprofit dedicated to preserving and protecting historical buildings, neighborhoods, and districts. The nonprofit recently posted a video about the house. Let's watch that too.
One of the last surviving homes from Phoenix's original streetcar neighborhood could soon disappear. Chances are you've driven past the Emerson house near Roosevelt Row dozens of times without realizing the land beneath it helped shape early downtown Phoenix. Built in 1902, the home belonged to Lewis Emerson, a butcher with Phoenix's Palace Meat Market, and his wife Clara. But the story really begins in 1888, when Arizona Territory Attorney General Clark Churchill developed one of Phoenix's first true suburban additions on the northern edge of downtown. Victorian cottages and brick bungalows line these streets, and even today you can see the unusually wide roads around the house still reflect the early streetcar corridors that shaped downtown Phoenix. But now, one of the last surviving pieces of that history is under threat. ASU has purchased much of the surrounding block for its new downtown medical campus, including its future School of Medicine. And to be clear, that project matters. The Emerson house is the only property left on the block they don't own, but the owner doesn't want to sell. Attorney Robert Young has owned the Emerson house for more than 50 years and was even married on its front steps. To him, this isn't just real estate. It's one of the last direct physical connections to Phoenix's original streetcar era. And this is where the story gets complicated. For years, private property rights have often been used to justify owners cashing in while developers demolished historic buildings. But now the situation is reversed. A homeowner wants to preserve his historic property, but he's facing pressure from ASU and the city to make the house go away. Allowing eminent domain beyond clear public necessities like roads or infrastructure raises larger questions about how much power any institution should have. Some people might argue that the house should simply be moved, but the location is part of the story. Once you separate a historic home from the place that gave it meaning, part of that history disappears too. So why not incorporate the house into the campus? Why not make it part of the story instead of treating it like an obstacle? You know, it's funny because we fly across the world to walk streets lined with aging buildings and layered history. But in Phoenix, some of us still treat our own history like it's standing in the way. And whether you see the Emerson house as a legal issue, a moral issue, or a historic one, the bigger question should probably make every property owner a little nervous. How much power should any institution have to force someone from a home they want to keep? And where do we draw the line?
Eminent domain is a really nefarious practice that oftentimes is used to take advantage of people and essentially rob them of their property and possessions. Young has been clear. The money doesn't matter as much as the principle and the history. It's not just a house. He's lived in it since the 1970s. He got married on the front steps in the 1980s. He has spent thousands of his own dollars fighting to preserve it. Why would anybody want to tear this down? It's like a statue, he told the Phoenix New Times. It's rich with history. It's hard to believe that this house has been either here or where the manhole cover was for the last 124 years. Now, he has also added that he's seen no evidence the home cannot be incorporated or worked around in the campus plans. I had seen no drawings, nothing to show that this can't live in compliance with their plans. The case has thankfully drawn national attention, with Representative Tim Burchett blasting Arizona State University's actions in a social media post. Eminent domain is theft. He says imminent domain, but it's eminent domain is theft. ASU, you should be ashamed, he said. Oh, absolutely shocking that they want to do this. All right, you guys, we are going to go ahead and, well, you know what? I do want to go through this final segment right here. Thank you very much to a couple of people over here on Rumble. Principled Enigma says, people need to realize that a democracy is the first steps towards socialism. That's why we are a republic, and communism is simply socialism at the point of a gun. Yes, it is. Bootsy, thank you for the $20 rand. Did you see that somebody lit Spencer's office on fire? Holy shit. No, I did not. We'll look at that in just a second. Principal Enigma says, if Trump knew about this, I'm sure he would step all over it. Eminent domain is unconstitutional when somebody is finally going to realize that and do something about it. The Institute for Justice has had a couple of really good and ongoing lawsuits, and they've actually won for people on the issue of eminent domain. Angie K also says they just tried to burn Spencer Pratt's office down. So we will check that out in just a second. But before we do, I have a quick message from our friends on Rumble. You guys, everybody hears a lot about crypto, but part of the story that a lot of people seem to miss is that crypto was created so that you could actually own and control your own money. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding onto your money and delaying transfers or limiting access, you're the one who's in control of it. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you have felt that problem in real time. So fast forward to today. Everybody's heard about crypto, but getting started might feel complicated. This is why Rumble Wallet is great, because it takes all the complexity out of it and it makes it simple. You choose what you want to buy: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, or even digital gold backed by real gold. There's no complicated setup. It connects with MoonPay, and you can use your credit card, debit card, or bank card and just be up and running in minutes. Once you're set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators like me or others directly. So right now, you can use that QR code on screen, scan it, or just click the link in the description and download the Rumble wallet. And from there, you can set up the wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game. And in just a few minutes, you go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. Thank you so much to Rumble Wallet. Okay, so let's look into this Spencer Pratt office being burned down. Let's go to X and see what we can find. Let's see. Spencer Pratt office. Spencer Pratt says fire at his Palisades office was not an accident and an investigation is underway. Fire breaks out at complex that housed Casa Nostra and the office of Spencer Pratt. Los Angeles Fire Department arson investigators were there on the scene early Thursday evening after a fire was reported late Thursday afternoon at the Highland Circle office building. Multiple firefighting units, including 2 ladder trucks, were dispatched. The building, which was not significantly damaged in the Palisades fire, was once the home of the popular Casa Nostra restaurant, which closed December 31st, 2024, and did not reopen following the fire. According to Oscar Chang, the building superintendent, the complex was undergoing an extensive remediation and was awaiting a permit to re-roof. We were here on Tuesday. Everything was great. There are a couple of tenants, even during the renovation. Spencer Pratt maintained an office here. His office was very low-key. He does not have his name on the office. According to Chang, eyewitnesses saw 2 guys exiting the building shortly before the fire was reported. Asked whether he thought the fire was related to Pratt's candidacy for mayor, he said, I don't think so at all. One of the tenants shared a video with me of a homeless person right around the corner. No one was living inside the building. The fire chief was interviewed, and he said, we are investigating the origins of the fire right now. Asked if he thought that the cause was arson, he said, at this point, we can't make a determination. We are still doing the investigation. All right, I'm looking to see like what the damage actually is, but it's difficult to tell because they've got construction going on. But it looks like in this video, you can see smoke coming out of the building. Yeah, this, this could very easily be tied to the fact that Spencer Pratt has office space there, or it could just be another homeless drug addict in Los Angeles setting fires because they're insane. All right, rounding out the show, 2 American employees of a restaurant in Huntsville, North Carolina, say this company stole their identities so that they could hire illegal migrants and have them use their information. The way they found out, one of the employees opened his W-2 and discovered he owed taxes on more than $20,000 he had never earned because somebody was being paid as him using his Social Security number. Now, the other employee logged into her account and saw a current illegal alien employee using her name and her Social Security number at the restaurant after she left their employment. It's alleged the company stole their identities so that they could staff the kitchen with illegal immigrants. Both say their home addresses and direct deposit accounts were changed after they left, and not a single person has been arrested for this incident as of today.
He had worked at the restaurant between January and July of last year, but when he got his W-2, he discovered he now owes taxes on over $20,000 of income he did not work for and has not received.
This is a search warrant for the state of North Carolina, so it looks like there actually is a legal investigation going on. The search warrant is dated for April 30th, so this is early days.
Local tax expert says she's seen this before.
Unfortunately, it is very common. There are people without legal status who work without a social security number.
A second former employee who says she worked at Firebirds from January to November of last year told Huntersville police when she checked the restaurant's system to view her wages, she observed there was a current employee using her name and Social Security number to be employed there.
This is a police matter. That is a fraud.
Both employees told police their addresses and direct deposit account numbers had been changed after they no longer worked there. Channel 9 asked our partners at Telemundo Charlotte to contact the alleged victims because they both primarily speak Spanish, but they declined to comment. We also reached out to Firebirds, which sent us a statement saying we are aware of an investigation by the Huntersville Police Department. The company is cooperating with local law enforcement in its investigation. Given the ongoing nature of the investigation, we are unable to comment further. This tax expert says if you think your information is being used in an unauthorized way, the first thing you should do is contact police to report potential identity theft.
Now, I've never been to a Firebirds, but I would not be going after learning that this has taken place. All right. Now, a scammer, a would-be scammer from India was attempting to steal $700,000 in gold from an elderly woman. These people contacted this woman, convinced them that they were law enforcement officers, and told her that she needed to buy gold. Now, the reason that did not happen is because this elderly woman went to a local gold dealer and said she wanted to buy $700,000 in gold. She had never purchased gold before, and Ben Soldat, who is the owner of Grand Rapids Coins, said, this does not seem normal. So he was concerned that she was being coerced or manipulated, and he contacted the Kent County Sheriff's Office. So she was told by this Indian scammer that somebody had stolen her Social Security number and that they were going to steal her money. Now, they were using her Social Security number allegedly to commit acts of terrorism, drug trafficking, and money laundering, and that by converting her cash into gold and then giving it to them for safekeeping, it was the only way that she would be able to make sure that her money was not stolen. Now, Yug Chauhan is the man who came to pick up the gold, and when he arrived, he was instead handed a bag of chocolate gold coins. And of course, the Kent County Police were right there to arrest him, and they did. He has made his first appearance in court, and he is looking at 2 20-year felonies. He was arrested and charged with false pretenses over $100,000 and using a computer to commit a crime. The only sad thing here is that undoubtedly there are other Indian scammers that are involved in this, and they, of course, have not been arrested. Now, I'm sure you remember the situation, the youth takeover at the D.C. Navy Yard Chipotle that we reported on last month. There was a group of young black kids who got into a violent altercation inside the Chipotle. Well, 3 of those teen suspects that were involved in this brawl have been arrested, and U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro had commented on this. She said that they are going to be charging the parents of these so-called youths, and those people are, of course, now going to be charged because these kids have been arrested. So good news. Now, I really wanted to show you this before we ended the show. We spoke yesterday about the lack of black jurors on the Carmelo Anthony trial team. And the reason those people wouldn't have been seated on the jury is likely because they admitted that they could not be impartial. In this clip right here, a couple of black women who have a podcast, they suggest to any black people who might serve on a jury to simply lie about the fact that they will not be able to be impartial so that they can be seated on a jury. And then that way they can go ahead and get black people who have actually committed crimes off of those charges.
If they say, can you be fair? Don't say, no, I'm not finna put a black man in jail. Don't say that. Okay. Cause if that's what you're going to say, you could have stayed home. You have to go and be like, no, I will hear the evidence. I can be fair. Don't say, I hate white people and I don't care what he did. Don't do that. That's what people were doing in this case. Okay. And then everybody's like in an uproar because there's no black people on the jury when damn near half of the black people who could have been on the jury canceled themselves out, you know?
It's frightening to think that people would do that so that they could sit on a jury to convict a white person or to nullify a verdict for a black person. Now, do you guys remember shortly after the Carmelo Anthony verdict was announced, Chicago police had announced that a burning cross was discovered inside Grant Park. This is a park that is frequented by blacks and leftists, and it was, of course, blamed on white supremacists. Well, luckily, the Chicago police have released an image of the suspect, the man who set the cross on fire, and it turns out he's an Asian. Wah, 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 wah. Can't catch a win, can ya? So yeah, it's not a white person, it's an Asian person. Also, a really horrible black woman named Dr. Stacy Patton, who is a professor at Howard University, wrote an article about the Carmelo Anthony Austin Metcalf situation after the verdict was read. And in that article, she blamed Austin Metcalf and his family for Carmelo Anthony's decision to murder him. She wrote, "Dear Jeff Metcalf, your son is dead because you failed to teach him that black boys have boundaries." She said that Austin failed to learn that black children have boundaries. In other words, Jeff should have taught Austin that black people will try to kill you if you stop them from violating social norms, because that's exactly what happened in this case. Now, there is also a shocking meta that is going on the internet right now. Black people posting images of themselves urinating on Austin Metcalf's grave. An Instagram account with over 10,000 followers posted these images right here, appearing to show this man taking a piss on Austin Metcalf's grave as a result of Carmelo Anthony being found guilty. The man in question has been doxxed, and he's been called out for this disgusting behavior. Right here is an image of Jeff Metcalf standing over his son's grave, holding up the I love you sign. Now, the man who had posted this image has come out and said that we are racist for getting angry at him for posting an image of himself pissing on Austin Metcalf's grave. And it's AI, so nobody should be upset about it. Here's another image posted of a different black man pissing on Austin Metcalf's grave. And he says, "Y'all dumb as F, gang. Den talm bout y'all doxed me like I'ma have a current address linked to my name. Man gone head, laughing, crying face. It's AI, calm down." And in this instance, a black talk show host has what may be a pretty good idea. He calls for black Americans to go back to Africa as a solution to America's white people problem because of Carmelo Anthony being found guilty. Now, I will be the first to say that I don't think it's appropriate for all black people to go back to Africa. But if you are a black person who is so enraged by Carmelo Anthony being found guilty that you think that it's permissible to kill white people or to attack them for doing nothing more than being white, I think you probably should go back to Africa. And I think that you're going to be in for a rude awakening when you do, because it's not going to be the Holy Land that you think it is. Now, this mass exodus of black people to Africa, I don't believe it's going to happen. I think it's more likely that we're going to see cases such as this. Black people championing the assassination or the assaulting of white people, again, simply because they're white.
I'm so proud of y'all for killing that white boy. See, they not used to this shit happening to them, y'all. My only problem is...
We're not used to this happening to us? Are you kidding me? What world are you living in? Because the situation of a black person killing a white person for pretty much nothing at all is not new. This happens all the time. Now, I don't need to play this clown's entire video for you because it's just more hooping and hollering and clapping, congratulating Carmelo Anthony for killing Austin Metcalf. But I do want to end with this. This is a quick article written on Twitter from a black woman, a user, and she says, I'm angry because I've spent most of my life under the apparently mistaken impression that the civil rights movement was about convincing people to stop treating me differently because I'm black. This now appears to be an unfashionable position. The modern trend seems to be convincing everyone to become extremely aware of race at all times, and preferably while yelling. I realized this while watching the reaction to the Carmelo Anthony verdict. Not the verdict itself, but the reaction. The verdict was a court proceeding. The reaction was what would happen if you fed 12 gallons of aviation fuel to a leaf blower and pointed it directly at the nation's remaining supply of racial goodwill. Almost immediately, the internet filled with declarations that the jury was all white. This was an interesting development because it wasn't. This presents a challenge for the narrative engineers. In previous eras, a fact that contradicted your argument was considered a problem. Today, it appears to be considered a minor administrative inconvenience. The jury contained a Muslim woman, several Asians, and a Hispanic man, but apparently they are all white. I assume this was determined using advanced academic mathematics that I'm not qualified to understand. This same mathematics allows people to explain that race is a social construct right up until the moment they need to win an argument. Then it becomes a rigidly defined biological category all over again. Science is amazing, isn't it? Then came the claims that Austin and his friends had ganged up on Carmelo. This was also fascinating because that didn't emerge during the testimony. No matter. We live in a golden age of flexible facts. See, if the old facts stop producing the desired amount of outrage, new facts can be harvested from the internet and brought directly to your home. And then things got genuinely scary. One prominent personality announced, "You don't fuck with black people because they might fucking kill you." No, I would like to pause here because I'm black. And this was extremely useful information for me because I had somehow reached adulthood without realizing that I was supposed to be threatening people. This wasn't in the handbook of racial behaviors I was issued at birth because I was under the impression that my responsibilities consisted primarily of paying taxes, worrying about my blood pressure, and trying to remember where I put my car keys. Apparently, I have instead been participating in a campaign of racial intimidation without even knowing it. This explains why I keep losing my black membership card. The thing that scares me is not that people say this nonsense. America has always produced loud idiots, as it's one of our great exports. What scares me is how many people cheer. How many people hear a statement that sounds suspiciously like a threat and decide it's wisdom. How many people hear racial tribalism and mistake it for racial solidarity? Because here's the ugly truth. Every time one of these people opens their mouth, somebody who has never met me learns something about me, or think they do. They learn that black people believe violence is justified. They learn black people reject evidence. They learn that black people only care about race. They learn that black people view justice as a team sport. Now, I get to spend my twilight years proving I am not the person they just described, and that is what makes me angry. Not offended, not annoyed, angry. You see, the Americans in my generation, Gen X and before, worked themselves half to death to try and convince the country that we are individuals. Individuals with different opinions, different politics, different dreams, different flaws, but still regular people. Now a collection of professional race hustlers seems determined to undo all of that so they can collect engagement on social media. The entire enterprise feels like a man setting fire to his own house because he enjoys being interviewed by the local news. The worst part is that they think they're helping. They genuinely seem to believe that making every issue about race will somehow help. I don't understand this. This is like believing that pouring bourbon into a lawnmower will improve fuel efficiency. The theory sounds questionable from the start, and the results are even worse. I don't want people to fear me. I don't want people to excuse me. I don't want people to hate me. I don't want people to admire me because of my race. I want the same thing I've always wanted. I want people to look at me and see a person, not a demographic, not a historical grievance, not a political weapon, not a member of a tribe, just a person. Every fucking time some loudmouth gets online and starts screaming racial identity matters more than evidence, more than character, more than truth itself, I find myself wondering how many more bridges they're planning to burn before they run out of matches. Judging by the reaction online, the answer appears to be quite a few. Anyways, I thought that was a brilliant and poignant breakdown from a person who dislikes the behavior we're seeing just as much as I do and just as much as you do out there in the chat. And it goes to show you that just because somebody has black skin, just because somebody has white skin, just because somebody has any color skin, they are not the same as every other person who shares that immutable characteristic. I really want to live in a country where we are all individuals and where we don't have to constantly talk about race and where we don't have to think, God, you know, I don't want to walk down the street and see a black person looking at me sideways because they might think they want to come and kill me because I look like Austin Metcalf. That's not the world I want to live in. That's not the world we're supposed to be living in, but it's the world that has been spun around us over the course of the last 20 or 30 years or so. Because when I was growing up, we were taught to be racially blind. We were taught that everybody needed to be judged on their own individual merits, on their character, not on the color of their skin. But now they have created a world around us where that's exactly what's happening, and where many people on the internet are forging bonds together so that they can talk about how badly they want to kill people simply because of the way I look. And that is not fucking okay. All right, you guys. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. I need to say thank you to Principal Enigma. I'm waiting for Denzel Washington to weigh in on this. He doesn't say much, especially, you know, lately and even politically. But, you know, if he did, that would be cool. Principal Enigma also says, I got to say my hat's off to the black lady who wrote this. Very well thought out and very well written. Yeah, definitely. All right, you guys. Thank you finally to everybody for hanging out with us. I got to bounce. I hope you had a wonderful time this week. I am going to play some video games on Sunday if you want to join me. If you don't, then I expect to see you back here Monday at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck and God bless. Please hit the like on your way out.